In 2025, the global economy was caught in the eye of a storm. A wave of tariffs hit trade, supply chains, and logistics all at once. But this wasn't just another round of political posturing. It was the largest escalation in tariff measures seen in decades, with consequences still unfolding today. The tariff war isn't a single event. It's an ongoing cycle of action and retaliation. In early 2025, major economies imposed sweeping tariffs on one another's goods. In response, trading partners retaliated with their own duties, creating a spiral that quickly spread far beyond the original disputes. Tariffs increase the direct cost of imports, but the real economic damage comes from the uncertainty they generate. Businesses have to factor in the possibility that tomorrow's shipment could face a 20% surcharge, or be blocked altogether. That uncertainty freezes investments, delays expansion plans, and diverts resources into contingency measures instead of innovation. The numbers tell the story. Global GDP growth slowed to around 2.3% in 2025, one of the weakest non-recession years in modern history. Inflation stayed stubbornly above pre-pandemic levels as tariffs inflated input prices and bottlenecks amplified those costs. Perhaps most importantly, the foundation of global supply networks, the smooth, predictable movement of parts and materials across borders, was shaken. When predictability disappears, companies start making defensive moves, and the efficiency gains of decades of globalization begin to erode. In a tariff war, trade rarely stops altogether. Instead, it changes course. Direct shipments along well-established routes dry up, replaced by more complex journeys through third countries. Consider this. Before 2025, many US-bound goods from China traveled directly across the Pacific. But under new tariffs, a Chinese-made component might first go to Vietnam for assembly, then be shipped to the US as Vietnamese origin, avoiding the steepest tariffs. Similar patterns emerged between Asia and Europe, with Eastern European countries acting as final assembly points. This rerouting creates winners and losers. Countries with free trade agreements, political neutrality, or geographic proximity suddenly find themselves in high demand as intermediate hubs. Vietnam, Thailand, and Mexico, for example, all saw significant growth in processing and re-export industries in 2025. But there's a cost. Every extra leg of the journey adds handling fees, customs checks, and time delays. Rules of origin, the legal requirements that determine where a product is from, become critical. A single misstep in documentation can result in an unexpected tariff bill or shipment seizure. The more complex the path, the higher the chance of errors and disputes, and the greater the administrative burden on both companies and governments. For decades, supply chain strategy was built on a simple principle: minimize cost. That meant consolidating production in low-cost countries, standardizing suppliers, and running lean with just-in-time inventory. The tariff war of 2025 broke that model. Now the buzzword is resilience, and it's not just talk. Manufacturers are reshoring some production back to home markets to shield themselves from tariffs. Others are nearshoring, shifting operations to neighboring countries to shorten transit times and reduce exposure to geopolitical shocks. And almost everyone is diversifying suppliers so that no single factory, port, or country holds too much of their production hostage. This shift comes with higher upfront costs. Building new supplier relationships, setting up alternative production lines, and managing a larger vendor base require more capital and more coordination. But companies are learning that these investments act as insurance. A diversified supply base means that a sudden tariff hike or port closure in one country doesn't bring your entire operation to a standstill. Technology plays a pivotal role here. Real-time visibility tools let managers monitor every stage of the supply chain and respond instantly to disruptions. Scenario planning has gone from an annual exercise to a constant process, with some firms maintaining 5 or more ready-to-deploy contingency plans at any given time. The cultural shift inside companies is just as important. Procurement, logistics, and finance teams now work more closely than ever, sharing data and making decisions together. Resilience is not an add-on, it's embedded in the DNA of how the supply chain is run. The logistics sector felt the tariff war in dramatic waves. At first came the slowdown. As new tariffs took effect, import volumes dropped sharply, shipping lines canceled sailings, ports saw reduced activity, and warehouses stood half empty. Then, without much warning, policy changes triggered sudden surges. Temporary tariff exemptions or pauses created a rush to move goods before deadlines returned. Ports that had been quiet were suddenly swamped, with ships waiting offshore, storage yards overflowing, and trucking networks overwhelmed. These boom and bust cycles are costly. Idle capacity during the slowdowns means lost revenue for carriers and port operators. But the surges create congestion, delays, and demurrage charges for shippers. Freight rates swing wildly as capacity is shuffled between trade lanes. The ripple effects are global. When carriers pull ships from one route to meet demand on another, it leaves gaps elsewhere. Exporters in unaffected regions suddenly face higher costs or longer waits because equipment has been redeployed to the hot lanes. For shippers, the lesson is clear. Logistics is no longer a fixed cost you can take for granted. It's a dynamic variable that needs active management, backup options, and early booking strategies to ensure reliability. Examples from 2025 really bring the data to life. After U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods increased in April, U.S. imports from China plunged by double digits in just a few months. Meanwhile, Vietnam's exports to the U.S. hit record highs, fueled by both investment in new factories and a surge in assembly for export operations. Mexico also saw gains as American companies shifted orders closer to home. In the electronics sector, parts sourced in Asia were often shipped to Mexico for final assembly before crossing the U.S. border tariff-free under existing agreements. Consumers definitely felt the impact too. Specialty food imports from Europe and Latin America rose in price after tariffs were applied. Retailers either passed the cost to customers or reduced their offerings. For many households, grocery bills climbed without warning. And in logistics, the mid-year tariff pause created a flood of cargo that pushed some U.S. ports back into congestion levels not seen since the pandemic years. Trucking firms reported record demand over a short window as companies scrambled to move delayed goods into the market. The future path really depends heavily on policy decisions in the coming years. If tensions ease, we could see a gradual recovery in trade volumes by 2026, as companies settle into new, more diverse supply networks. If they escalate, the global economy could split into trading blocks, each with its own supply chain and little interaction between them. Either way, some shifts are here to stay. Businesses will keep investing in geographic flexibility, having at least two suppliers in different regions for critical products. They'll bring parts of production closer to end markets where risk is highest. They'll invest in real-time visibility, knowing exactly where their inventory, cash, and contractual obligations stand. And they'll secure transport and port capacity early, treating it as an essential resource rather than just a commodity. In short, the post-2025 competitive edge will belong to those who can adapt fastest, route most efficiently, and protect their customer service levels regardless of political or economic turbulence. The 2025 tariff war didn't freeze global trade, but it definitely changed its shape. Direct routes gave way to detours and costs rose from both tariffs and the extra layers of complexity in moving goods. Supply chains became less about chasing the lowest cost and more about surviving the next disruption. Logistics adapted to a world where the only constant is fluctuation, from idle docks to packed terminals in a matter of weeks. The key takeaway is simple. Resilience is now a strategy, not a luxury. Those who master it won't just endure the turbulence, they'll use it as an advantage. Thanks for watching today's video. I hope you found it helpful and insightful. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe to Logistics ABC. Turn on notifications so you never miss out on future videos. Check out the recommended videos here for more great content. Thanks for being part of the Logistics ABC community and see you in the next video.